Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Barnes Babes Book Club. It was touch and go for a minute today about whether I was going to be able to do this, but we're here and we're thriving. So hello, I'm Paige. You're on my channel. Today we'll be talking about Ruin and Rising, which is the third and final book in the Grishaverse trilogy. And for me, I would say this book was like a 3.5, closer to a 3 than it is to a 4. I think that's like where I'm landing on this book right now.
Fair. I'm Maureen, and I feel like nostalgia has to get, like, I have to give it a 4 or 5 because just it's like the nostalgia. You can't separate it, and that's like where my brain will go. It's hard to actually rate this book, so.
Valid.
I'm Dulcie. I think the nostalgia also plays in for me, and so I feel like I probably like younger self me rated this like 4.5, and I actually enjoyed it better this time around, so I think I'm just gonna give it a 5.
Love it.
Wow.
Love that.
Okay.
I'm Anais, and I'm torn. I think it's like a 3.5 or a 4 because I like the all the threads coming together, all of the things being like finished and concluded, but everything, the whole like Mal, everything. Except for the very end, everything about like Mal's existence in this book made me sad and annoyed. So I don't know,
but I get it.
I mean, I still ship them, but like, why is he the M?
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm gonna be probably the lowest rating here. Last time I read it, I rated it 3.5. This time I'm more like a 3, 2.5, and it has everything to do with the fucking ending.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Hi guys, I'm Kira. I think my rating is probably like a 3.5 or 4. I liked this one the least out of all of them, but it was like I got there and I was like, I just need to know. I just need to know it all now. I just need to see what happens. And I think Hannah and I are probably going to agree about the ending, that like, I feel like we probably feel similarly about that. But I'm also worried because I read Six of Crows since we last streamed, and I felt like that was really for me. So I feel like that's kind of skewing why I think I'd probably, trying not to think about Six of Crows, I'd probably give it a 4.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's hard when you have that in your brain.
It's true. Yeah. So I will try to do a synopsis. I've written down everything that I remember from the fever dream. That was me reading this book today. So we start at the White Cathedral. Alina semi has access to her powers when we start. Like, she knows like what she needs is to be able to access sunlight, and she can't do that because they're underground. There's a whole plot that happens. They blow something up, a fireplace, I'm pretty sure. And then Alina has access to her powers again, so they're able to escape the apparat. And they decide that they're going to go look for the Firebird, but they have to split up with their group because it has to be a secret mission because they don't trust anybody, understandably, because somebody does betray them later. So they escape, they're trying to get to the Firebird, and then they get captured by these like deserters. And Nikolai is part of the group, which was great. That was the best introduction of Nikolai ever. He saves them. He takes them to like this stronghold in a mountain because, of course, he has a mountain stronghold that nobody knows about. And while he's there, they're like, there's a little bit of flirting between Alina and Nikolai. Like, Alina and Mal decided they can't be together. Like, she has to marry Nikolai. That's the only way they're going to move forward. There's a whole bunch of angst. Bagra's there. Loved seeing Bagra. She was great. She dropped the whole story that she is actually the daughter of Morozova, which was, I forgot that was a thing, and I almost like freaked out at my friend's house while I was reading it. And we also get another moment between Alina and the Darkling using their little bond, and we discover the Darkling has a name, and it's kind of a disappointing name to me. His name is Alexander. Doesn't really hold the
I
weight
would
that
like to.
need
I would like to investigate that later because that's a weird thing. And I'm gonna take this moment. I'm gonna stop my camera quickly just to grab my notebook of notes because I forgot that.
Okay.
But you continue, please.
I'll continue like rattling through this.
Yeah.
So as usual, the Darkling interrupts everybody's plans. So before they can leave to go get the Firebird, he attacks and he infects Nikolai with darkness and makes Nikolai like this sort of like a hybrid of his dark creature and human, because Nikolai is like fighting being taken over by the darkness, which was the most interesting character development for that character. The group escapes, as they always do, because they have plot armor, and they go in search of the Firebird to complete Alina's little trifecta, except they discover that the Firebird isn't the third amplifier Mal is, and I forgot about that. Oh my god, almost started crying at my friend's house. She was really there for the entire experience.
You need to be held after reading that part of the book.
I read that and then I was like, if you guys see me crying, just ignore me. It's because of the book. I cannot handle this right now. So the Darkling attacks Karmazin, where all the kids are, the Grisha kids, and he sort of tricks Alina into believing that he is going to like sacrifice these kids in the fold if she does not come to him. And they come up with like a little plan to defeat the Darkling. That doesn't happen. Like they fuck up. He brings more people. The kids were never there. He was like, you want me to make me your villain, so I'm gonna pretend to be your villain. Alina kills Mal. Rip Mal for like 5 minutes. And then she gets like this blast of power, but then the power disappears. She doesn't have it anymore. She realizes she's given it to other people. I was very confused by that bit. By that point, I was speed reading though, so maybe somebody can explain it to me.
It's still confusing. I have so many bones to pick with this ending.
She kills the Darkling, which it felt too easy that she just like stabs him the same way she stabbed Mal. He dies, and everybody's defeated. Everybody lives happily ever after for the most part. Mal comes back to life because of course he does, because I don't know, this is a happily ever after kind of book. And they live happily after like with an orphanage, living their best lives.
I hate that
part. So there's our synopsis of this chaotic
their
book.
best life. I don't know.
I'm holding all of my ending thoughts until someone says their negative ones and I can say my other.
I'll be with you, Maureen. I'll be with you there.
Okay, so like I'll start off with like this book. A lot happens in this fucking book. So much happens. So how did you feel like it was as a reading experience for you?
Are we going in order? Just how
anybody
round
go for it.
I don't need to go first.
I mean, the reading for me, this is the one thing about Bardugo is like her books are so easy to read for me. Like I never really struggle with them because it's just the writing is very accessible, and so I never have an issue with the reading experience. And I always know as soon as I pick it up, I'll finish it within a couple of days because so I didn't have an issue with the reading experience. The plot though, and though I have so many questions because I actually don't agree that I think everything got tied up nicely in this book. And I think there's something about this book and Alina as a protagonist that really disappointed me, because in the other books, I feel like she wasn't in control, but she kind of had some agency. Whereas I feel like we lost that in this book, and that really frustrated me.
Yeah, I found this, it was like
I feel like things were happening to her the whole time, and I was like, that's kind of my issue with the plot, is like it felt like just all these curveballs were being thrown at the team, and like, that was just very frustrating for me.
That's fair.
I feel like for me it was like disappointing because not like disappointing in the sense that like I expected more for a finale than just like a ring me up on my like spirit line and tell me that I have to be somewhere in 5 days. Like that, I was sort of like, I don't know how this is. I couldn't remember how it ended. And I was like, I don't know how it's going to wrap up in a like satisfying way for the reader. It just felt like very anticlimactic, obvious. Like honestly, like I was not satisfied reading this book.
I love ring me up on my spirit line. This is gonna be my tagline. I will not answer the phone. Ring me up on my spirit line.
Maureen,
I'm trying to wait till we talk about ending talk.
I mean, we can talk about the ending.
Okay,
we all know what happened.
Okay, here's the thing. I love the ending. because I love the messaging of it less than like I think it necessarily makes a lot of sense, if that makes sense. I do love the like full epilogue ending that Alina gets ultimately what she wants. Like, even though I think, Hannah, you have a great point that like a lot of things are happening to her in this book, and I have never thought about that, and I'm like, yes, that is very true. But I think she actually finally gets what she wants in the end. Like, that's all she wanted for like so many books. Like, she just wanted peace and to live her little life, even though it's like a bittersweet ending because she loses her power. I think that's like, since even though Mal doesn't die fully, I think like the kind of like caveat for that is she loses her powers, which was becoming like was so important to her now. So that's like the loss that she suffers. So I like that she kind of like got most of what she wanted. And I also, even though it's very confusing, and I still agree that I don't think it makes a lot of sense, I like that like a bunch of normal people got to be sun summoners, because that was like almost turning on its head what the Darkling was trying to do. Like, he was like, wow, I hate all these normals. I hate all these people. And it was like, from Morozova was like, all the normal people, they're gonna have powers now. And so I kind of like that it was like all of this stuff that like the argument almost was about. Like, the Darkling wanted to control everything with Grisha, and the people he didn't think should have power ended up with power in the end. So I know it's a very like
that part, but I just didn't quite like it. Didn't I'm like, you skipped a bunch of steps. Like,
I can say that. I like where it ended up, so I'm like, I'm happy.
Yeah. That's fair. I'm nitpicky. I'm like, great, but I don't get it.
I remember when I read it the first time, I think I was like speeding through it because I like binged the series and I was like, I want to know what happens. How does this end? And also, like, we didn't have any view towards like Six of Crows or King of Scars or any other books like coming next. So this was like the end of it. And I remember just like gobbling it up, and I like, skipped so many details. It just went completely over my head. Like, I don't think I appreciated that Mal was the final amplifier very much. I was just like, okay, cool. Well, I guess let's go. And I didn't like appreciate the Morozova storyline. And then reading it this time, where I think like I still read it fast, but I think like because I knew what was coming, I could appreciate all the details a little bit more. I really enjoyed the Morozova like storyline. I thought that was really interesting, and I think like it for me, it was that message too about like these like two sort of worlds of Ravka that are like the people with magic and don't have magic have been like very sort of antagonistic in a lot of ways. Just kind of like they kind of deal with each other because they have to for the sake of the country, but they don't really like each other, which is like demonstrated through the books. And then like I think I really enjoyed how they talked about Morozova like actually falling in love with normal people and like having a normal child. And then I thought it was just like really interesting, the sort of like that message that keeps being drilled towards throughout the series of like calls to like, and you assume that like Alina is like coming from some kind of like powerful heritage which has like caused her to be this sun summoner, but then I think like I really love the she just comes from like nothing really, that she's just like normal like everyone, which I really liked, because like that was like if you're a fan of Star Wars, like
literally
that's what we
I was
didn't
like,
get
why
from
did
Star
this
Wars.
just now occur to me that this is the Star Wars I wanted?
That was the Star Wars I wanted. So like I'm like, okay, I gotta hear. So yeah.
I feel like I had very similar thoughts about the ending as you, Maureen. I feel like I liked that they had that like little epilogue moment. I liked that they could like live their normal lives and everything was like peaceful and no one kind of knew what they had done. Everything about that seemed really kind of like, I don't know, kind of cheesy and poetic, and I dig that stuff. And the like everyone gets sun summoner powers really gave me like Buffy flashbacks, which I enjoyed as well. But I don't know, the like whole like she loses her powers somehow Mal comes back to life, even though I was glad he did. Like none of that I was like, where are you pulling these things from? Like just all of a sudden these things are possible now? Like I think I misspoke earlier when I said that like threads were tied together, because that part for me was not that at all. And like that part gave me issues. I was like, where's the like continuity here? Where was this set up earlier? But I still liked how it ended. I don't know.
Yeah. I think my read was really similar to what Dulcie said the first time she read it. Like, I read the trilogy over the span of like a few days, and I was like ready for it to I was just like ready to know what was going to happen. Obviously I read them recently, so I knew there were other books out there, but I feel like at first I was like happy with mostly how it ended. I actually really, really didn't like the ending where they like are at the orphanage and like no one really knows who they are and they just get to like have this quaint life. And I'm like, no, that's not how trauma works. Make it messier. No. Maybe that's the reflection of myself than it is the writing. But yeah, I just thought it was kind of like funny and odd that like that part they could just kind of like walk away from it all. Which again, I guess like hearing other people talk about it, I'm like, yeah, it is what she wanted. But it feels like you never really get to see her like make choices and like have her own agency. Like you really don't get to see like her be like, this is what's happening and I'm deciding it so, because there's so many like moments that get foiled where like she's just about to like get an opportunity to wield her power, and not like the sun summoner per se as her power, but just like her own self and like her own agency, and then like something happens and everything gets thrown off and she's like set back again, which I know is how every story works, but just in a way that she never gets to. I felt she never got to have that moment, and then it just ends with her being like this sweet kind of weird mysterious lady who runs an orphanage and knows the king. Like I was like, oh,
I feel like, go ahead, Maureen.
Oh, I was gonna say I can see that. I also think like how Leigh writes those intros and outros are also very oversimplified in every single book. And I think that's partially on purpose to its detriment to an extent. And I think there's definitely like, I would have loved to see more trauma, but I think like I see inklings of it in like the thing where she's like holding her hand in the sunlight in the window and obviously having a lot of issues where she's like pretending to play with the sunlight, but it's just a very like one-off, like kind of line.
I feel like part of it for me, I want to know like your guys' thoughts about the Darkling for this book specifically, because I felt like when we learned about like Morozova and how like that whole backstory of how he actually died because he brought his kid back to life because Baghra killed her sister by mistake, that was the most interesting part of this book to me. I was like, this is the story I want to explore more because it's so complicated, but also my feelings for the Darkling shifted again from book 2 to book 3 back to sort of how I felt about book 1. Not that I ship him with anybody, but that I understood where he was coming from more, because he grew up at a time where the Grisha were literally killed because they were misunderstood by like the people who didn't have powers. And like you understand where he's coming from more. And I sort of just felt like not bad that he died, but I was like, it was so like, it was dumb to like the way he died because it was just between the two of them. I'm like, why is this the story we're getting told? Because it's like on a grander scale, Grisha is still going to be killed in other countries. Nothing has really changed based on everything that's happened, except now there's a new king. Like, it felt like the entire world was still stagnant and still where it was at the beginning when we were sold a story about like a world changing, like, relationship, kind of like the whole like Darkling being like, we're gonna change the world, and then they didn't change the world at all. So I feel like that was like partly what I was struggling with, because I'm so used to like grander stakes, and maybe that was the point, is like this was just a story about people who have power. And I don't know if any of that made sense, but how do you feel about the Darkling and Morozova and like that whole plot point?
I watched sorry, who did I interrupt just now?
No, it's all good. Go ahead.
I was watching the Snark Squad this weekend about Captain America and the Winter Soldier, and one of them said something about villains. The villain's right, but don't do murder. And I was like, this is the Darkling. Villain was right, but don't do murder. Like, why did you do murder if you just didn't do murder? You could have been right. And that's how I feel about that. I kept telling you guys, I was like, the Morozova storyline is important. I know, and I know I like it. I just can't remember why. And I like it so much. I don't like how it was told to us. It was very like, here's this thing that happened, and I'm like, okay, and now we just move on from that. Like that I wanted so much more from that storyline. And this is partly why I'm so upset at the ending, because it felt like I think Alina does want to be alone and live her life and stuff, but so much of, especially the first book and especially the second book, is Alina realizing that she can use her power for good, and doing such a good job of it in the second book. Like when she was running, like things kept happening and interrupting her, but up until the attack from the Darkling, like things were going her way. And I was like, yes, I don't want Dark Alina anymore. I want Alina who is using this great power for the betterment of both the normal people and the Grisha, and like uniting them in a way, because she comes from normal people. She comes from an orphanage and being a nobody, and now she's got this power. And to me, it was like such a wasted opportunity that we don't get to see her do that, because I felt like there was hints all through. I was like, did I make this up? I think I made up Dark Alina in my head. That was me. But I think there were hints throughout the books that Alina does care so very much about the people, and she wants to do what she can to help them. And now she, like, I guess she is kind of doing that, but I just feel like, why does she have to choose? Like, why I'm not buying that she had to choose between Mal or her power. And that's why I'm like, this whole losing her power storyline is dumb, and I don't get it. Because I was actually warming up to Mal in this book. I was like, I don't hate Mal as much, because he was being like, he was saying things and acting in a way that made sense now. He was like, okay, I'm realizing my errors. I'm going to try to help you however way I can and stuff. And she kept being like weird about that. And I mean, I don't want to get into that because she was like being so messy and toxic. Poor dude's like, leave me alone so I can do my job. And she's like, but I love you.
She still hadn't gotten over all of that. He was like, I'm moving past it, and she was not.
He wasn't even moving past it. He was like, in order for me to help you, I have to keep this distance between us. I'm like, good for you, Mal, putting up boundaries. And then, like, to me, it's like, one, I never really got, after they left the castle, after the king was banished, why they still had to, like, not have a relationship. Because the whole thing was, like, he was an ordinary, and she can't be, like, that one. And I was like, okay. But now that Nikolai's the king, he's a different king than the other king. Why? I mean, it just seemed dumb to me that was still a thing that they had to like deal with. So at the end, I was like, okay, fine. I'm fine with Mal and Alina, but I just don't buy that she has to lose her power in order to stay with Mal. I'm just like, that's stupid, and I don't like the messaging of that, because to me that goes against the like overall message of the story. Is like, we can all be like together, and some of us can come from different, like, it just, I'm like, that part is just really upsetting for me. Is like, why can't she stay? Because she cares so much about the children. She loved hanging out with the other Grisha when she was learning in the first book, like when she finally got to like use her power and learn and be part of the community. She really, like, there were so many passages where she was clearly enjoying that. And I'm like, and now she just loses it all because what? There's no justifiable reason for me, because the Mal thing does not, like, she could have Mal and also do that. Like, that to me was just like,
I can let anybody else talk. It's so interesting, the like differences in read, because I didn't read it as like she did that to keep Mal. It was like she thought she was working towards having the ultimate power. And I agree, like there's something like where she could have been so good at that, but she thought she was working toward the ultimate power, but what she was really working toward was empowering other people. Even though I do agree, like, there's a loss there with, like, why did she need to lose her powers to do it? But I think for me, it was, like, a turn of, like, rather than, like, she's keeping Mal and her powers, it was, like, she was working toward ultimate power, even though she didn't know what that meant, to bring an end to everything, and that's not what it was. It was a very, like, turn moment, like, I'm going to use that to Morozova, whatever his power plan, to empower all of these other people to have the Sun Summoner power instead.
But
I don't really understand
that.
I don't understand why, but like that's how I read it, as like that rather than like keeping both, if that makes sense.
I don't think it was about Sun Summoner power specifically. I think Morozova was like, if there's somebody out there who wants this ultimate power, joke's on them, they're not getting it, because
Ooh.
like I think it was like
Okay.
I don't think it was specifically for Alina, because I was thinking the entire time, what if the Darkling decided to use all three? He would have just lost his powers.
He would have killed Belle like this. He doesn't care.
No, like if he got all three of them, he would have lost his power as well. That was always
Yeah.
like the plan of what was going to happen, because it was like I was wondering like what was Morzova's thought process, and I think it was a catch-all. Like anybody who wanted to seek this kind of power would not be able to wield it themselves; they would give it to other people. So like I don't think it was like a matter of I feel like that part was just, it also confused me though, because I was like thinking like what if the Darkling got it? Like what if anybody else used it? How would that have impacted anything? So like it was a weird choice.
I see that a little bit. I still think we needed a little bit more.
Yeah,
Just
for
that
sure.
happened in like 2 pages, and I'm like, what is even going on?
Yeah,
I
think you need to like sit with the Morozova storyline to fully like think it through. And I like that read that you mentioned, that you just explained, Paige. And like I also sort of think about the parallels with Morozova back with his children, with Bagra and the other daughter, which was like that he did it to save that daughter that had died. And so that's why I think that like that Mal had to die at the end for that next step of the process to happen. And I mean, also when I was reading it, I thought Mal was just like dead. Like I'm so used to some like characters just dying and just that being it. Like Mal felt expendable as much as I love him. He did feel expendable. And I used his face. And I think like I don't know, like I think that Alina like grew in her agency through this book for me when I was reading it, because I think reading every time that the Darkling was like using that psychic power to talk to her, he was like very coercive and very like manipulative, and was like, I'm gonna leave you with no choices until you have to like be with me, and then we can like be powerful together. And then there was no choice also with Nikolai, because that would have been like completely like political, but he was still like, I think he proposed a second time in this book, right? Like that was still very much like a we should rule together type of thing. But I think like that's why Mal was like, that was the only way that she would have like her choice. Like that's where like her choice would be. But I also think there's lots of like examples of like really good friendship and like their little crew that they have. That
I loved the crew.
That stays through, like going through the tunnels, and then they go to like this fortress place, and then go for the Firebird, and it's just like Mal's like telling Alina to like, you know, there's one part where after the attack, like he's like, grieve with them, like, you know, they're your friends. And I just think that like she really like became in a lot of ways like the leader of the pack, and I thought it was just so cute. I love friendship, so
I did love the friend group, and now I know why I love Zoya, because I really liked her in this book. I was like, yes, I'm
so good in this book.
I'm back. I'm back with Zoya. But yeah, no, I did like the group a lot. I don't know. I just feel like I don't know if I agree about the Alina agency thing.
Yeah. Can we talk about Mal being related to the Darkling?
Because she thought she was getting away.
She worried. She was like, shit, is he my cousin? Because she thought she was descended from the other line. And I was like, oh no, are we going there? I don't remember. And then we realized it was Mal, and I was like, okay, that makes it like a little bit better. But the part where she's literally just killed the last of the Morozova line. Like she's killed both of them, and they're just like dead around her. I was like, that is a power move. Like, okay.
Oh, okay. That's amazing.
But what did you think about like Mal, the whole I am become a blade, when he literally was the final amplifier?
Okay. I know people shit on I am become a blade, but like he is. That's like
literally
on the nose. This is literally what he wants and what he believes. So
it's so cheesy though.
I know it's cheesy, but like, do we expect anything more?
No, it's Mal.
It's Mal. Like he's cheese personified, truly, in many ways. Like he says all of the things when he gets over himself. But yeah,
I will say I liked, even though I was like rolling my eyes at that part, I actually really liked Mal a lot more in this book than I did in the previous two, and especially more than the last one, because in the last one he was really like every time Alina would be celebrating something, Mal would come and rain on her parade, and I'm like, okay, fuck you, get out of here. And in this book, he was a lot more healthy. And like, I don't know what they were doing down at that like underground church thing. Maybe there was therapy. I don't know. But he was a lot like, he was like telling her to be with her friends. He was like hanging out with Misha, the kid. And like, I was like, okay, if this I could live with. That's why I was like, I could live with Alina and Mal. It's fine. I'll deal with it. But the power thing. The one thing though that I'm like, no, is how the fuck is Mal the amplifier when him and Alina have been like touching all the time? And like, I'm like, how did this not?
I know
what?
she kind of like said it in book 2.
Like once, and I was like that. I didn't even clock it until I saw that part, and then I went.
And she's like, the first time I used my powers, I was holding Mal, and he was like dying. And like she like explains it, but I'm like, you shouldn't have to explain it to me for me to understand what's happening here. Like you shouldn't have to go back on the retcon. Yeah, like the whole like, why did he have to die? Why couldn't he just hold her wrist like he was doing and like her use the power? I was like,
because the whole thing is like he was gonna die and she was gonna use his bones as a bracelet. So I was like, okay, so now she killed him. Is she gonna dissect him right in front of us? Like, what's gonna happen now? And she didn't have to dissect him right in front of us. And I was like, that makes no sense. Because then when she killed the other amplifiers, it didn't immediately give her power. Something else had to happen in order for her to like access that power. So that part is just, I think I understand thematically why this happened, but I don't think in the execution it went smoothly. Like, I just don't buy it. And for me, I know not everyone's like this, but for me as a reader, I need to actually buy what you're like, for me to accept the theme that you're trying to tell me, I need to buy the way that you're telling it. And I just did not buy it at all. And so that part for me is like really a sticking point. So that's,
Kira, you look like you were having thoughts.
I don't know. I think kind of the best parts of this book were the parts that like were like side plots and like side moments. Like I loved it, like the whole, obviously like Nikolai re-proposing to Alina, because I just like love Nikolai and I could have stand that like political marriage. But then him getting like turned into like half Volcra, and like you see him coming in and out, and like he's fighting it. Like I thought that was such an interesting part that we didn't get a lot of, like all the missing holes of Morozova. But what I was gonna say was that I think with Mal getting killed, it's very weird that he doesn't become like an amplifier that she wears. But also that's following like the idea that the story is the Firebird. Like when the final amplifier is like Mal, and like somehow that's wrapped up in like the daughter who died, then I feel like it is going to be an anomaly, and it is going to be like beyond the fact that like, I don't know, I just feel like it is allowed to be like different. Like she doesn't have to make him into a bone necklace to work. Like it's just gonna.
I didn't want to see her do that. Like I was not looking forward to that.
I think part of it too is like he didn't mean to make his daughter an amplifier. Like that was an accident. So I think like part of it is like he didn't do it the way he normally would do it. So the daughter has the power.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah, like it's because he brought her back to life.
Yeah, I think such like a fun part of like what she intertwines in all the books with the saints is like the mythologies of them all. And I like that like you watch Alina's mythology like change, so you like see how they're like this is what she looks like, this is what her power is, this is what she does, and like even though a bunch of it isn't true, like you see that myth begin to build. And I think that's true with the Morozova saint stories, because you get like a little bit of them throughout all of the books until you get like the actual story from Bagra, and like where those things deviate is great. Like where you see her reading like, oh, the story is that it was like a little boy in the town that got killed and then he brought him back, or you hear all these like alternative tellings, and there's something about like a broken telephone with mythologies that like I can very much appreciate. So I did like that part. But
what about you, like Mal shipper Anais, queen of the Mal fandom?
Am I its queen? I don't know. I feel like a lot of the parts that I struggled with were purely because it seemed like a new detail, like a new possibility that Leigh was just kind of like throwing out there because she wanted to. Like ultimately I was happy that Mal didn't have to die. And to me, like, I don't know, for me it felt different, and then just hearing you guys talk about it, the more I think about it, it's not actually that different. Like, the stag wasn't the same stag that Morozova found. Like, it must have, I don't know, I was thinking, like, because Mal was a descendant, then, like, maybe that part of it made it different and he didn't have to die. But I think really I was, like, understanding that whole bit in, like, a very Harry Potter-esque way, like, how... Horcruxes.
Yeah.
Like, when he died but didn't have to die because they killed the Horcrux, like, she killed the amplifier. I don't fucking... I don't know. I was very confused. Also, reading it so fast, like Dulcie said, like, I was just, I wanted to know what happened, and then when he didn't die, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm happy. Maybe.
The Nikolai storyline was, like,
forever.
so sad.
Oh.
I forgot that, like, King of Scars, like, the title of his book came from this series. Like, until I read it, I was like, oh, that makes, like, now I'm, like, more excited to go back and read it, because he grew on me, this book. Wasn't impressed with him in book 2, but in book 3, I was like, this is why I like Nikolai.
But okay.
When he proposes to her under the fucking shooting stars, are you kidding me?
No, I mean, I don't understand how it didn't happen in the second book.
No, he's just like, he was like basic, boring, whatever. And then he becomes a weird Volcra person. And that's what did it for me. I was like, he's suffering now.
What is this dream, Paige?
That's it, Paige. That's it. Now he's got, like, he's not just like a prince who, like, is so charismatic and he just kind of, like, orchestrates everything and it all works. Like, now he's had, like, some suffering. And
and, like, he knows, like, he's actually a bastard. Like, he knows his dad wasn't the king. Like, there's more interesting things before.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that wasn't official, though. It wasn't
pretty
official.
Excuse me. He was the whole time.
It's like,
he was like, I'm trying so hard because I've never had a role in anything, so this is why I'm creating a role for myself. That was his whole thing. Like, there's even a part before they get attacked by the Volcra, and I tabbed it, I'm pretty sure, where he's like, everybody go away, I want to be alone and, like, think about everything. Even you, Alina, like, he's clearly such a nuanced character, and I don't understand how y'all just don't get it.
Well, he was not in book 2. In book 2, he was just, like, second son syndrome.
Maybe
like,
it's because Alina is imagining what she wants to.
Yeah, I feel like she didn't see
through,
him like that. Yeah, like, she saw him as the prince.
Although I shit on Bardugo's, like, magic key writing sometimes, I think she actually did put enough subtext in the previous book to, like, lead us here.
I feel like it's just because, like, I know, like, he wasn't, like you were saying, he was an interesting character because he was, like, new, but, like, because I watched all these shows that have a similar trope, that I was like, in the second book, it's not really new, but in the third book, it was more interesting to see him actually step into power and see what he does with everything and how resourceful he was with, like, the little, like, mountaintop. And the way he sent his dad away was boss. Like, he just impressed me.
I know.
We also had a really great Genya moment there as well.
Yes, I was thinking about that so much.
Iconic. Yeah. There's so many quotable lines in this book.
Yeah.
That whole Genya thing is just, like, the whole... Because at first when Alina was like, oh, don't tell anyone that Jenny's here, I was like, why? Like, I couldn't quite understand it at first. I was like, what's wrong? Like, she's part of the crew now. And then when it happened, I was like, oh, right. But that scene, at first I was a little, I don't know, I was nervous about how it was going to get handled, because I just don't want, like, I don't know, I don't want it to be shamey, but it wasn't. And I loved how it was handled and how she kind of was, like, very vulnerable, but extremely strong. It's like what David said after, like, and David, oh my God, David and Genya, that's who I ship, David and Genya, and how cute David was. It's like, I love metal, and that's why I love you.
Oh my, that was cute. Yeah. Speaking of other ships, there was also Nadia and Tamar, who were, like, my
yes. I wanted more, though. Like, I was like, listen, I forgot that I didn't even clock it the last time I read it. And now I'm like, I need more.
I was going to say, back to you talking about David and Genya, when you went on stories and were like, I'm actually David.
I am David, though. Honestly, thinking about the books now, if I had to pick a character, I am David, because David also created that, like, light thing that was disastrous for them. And I was like, that is totally something that I would do. Like, I would be so into something and, like, do all this research and then accidentally create a bomb or something. But no, yeah, David the whole time, especially the bags through the tunnel, and Toya being like, "What the fuck, man? You were only supposed to pack necessities," and he's like, "Yeah, these are the necessities." I can see myself doing that completely. But yeah, no, I love him.
Lol. Okay, what other characters were introduced? I feel like we got a couple more. We got the guy with the cat.
Harsh.
Yeah.
My favorite, personally. Loved him.
Yeah, and then they killed him though. I was very sad. I was surprised at how sad I was because I was so suspicious of him.
They didn't kill the cat though.
No,
Which was great. I'm glad that the
lives.
cat went with Misha, who is my other fave in this. I'm like,
I
glad
know,
Misha. Them.
I also like Adric.
Yeah,
Nadia's
even
brother.
though, like that, he went through a lot. That poor kid, like losing an arm, not getting with Zoya because Zoya was not having any time for him.
Wasn't there like a particularly large age gap? Isn't he supposed to be like
3 younger.
He's like 3 years younger than her. Yeah.
Maybe.
15 and she was like in her 20s? I'm like, that's weird.
Oh God, they do read like they're older than they are, but like
I
that's
do imagine
fantasy.
most of her characters are as much older than they are, just because. Yeah.
Do you want
who
to talk
else?
about Alexander?
I just find it weird that you have such an issue with the name. Like, what were you expecting
I
it to
don't
be?
know. I just didn't need the name. I didn't like. It humanizes him, sure, whatever. But I was just like, Alexander, really? Of all,
What would
the
have been a preferable name?
not Alexander. Anything else?
Are you like Bagra would never? Bagra would never.
Bagra's name is so much better than Alexander. Yeah, it was very disappointing. I'm sorry. Like, it just made him sad soft boy for me.
Okay.
But maybe that was the point.
I know it was supposed to humanize him, but like at the same time, he's still the
It's a
Darkling.
very normal name, but it's kind of makes sense because Bagra wouldn't want to name her kid a weird name because she doesn't want people to pay attention to him.
Okay.
Because she's
I'll let you
like,
have
we
that.
need to
Victorian
hide.
boy too. Sad Victorian boy. That's just a big.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
You said sad boy. I was like, gotta add the Victorian in there.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt like I didn't really care about his name at all. So I was surprised that you had such an issue with it. Out of all the things that you could have an issue with.
Maybe it's because I didn't remember that we got like an actual name for the Darkling. I like feel like I erased that from my memory, and like seeing that, I was like, why was this necessary?
I think it was so.
Oh, go ahead.
I think
go
it
ahead.
was so. I think it was so Alina could like say his name and like see him because he was a very lonely like.
If it was too hard to pronounce, it might have made that death moment a little awkward. Before you die, how do I pronounce your name?
But like, what did you think about like the Darklings, like his motivations? I feel like I was very confused by them in this book. Really?
I liked them in this book. I think this is where I like finally felt like so much of it made there's so much more sense behind it all. Like someone was talking about it earlier about how like with the Morozova story you get like the and you see the oh my god words
context.
Yeah, you see the context, but you see the conflict that's been going on for like years and like hundreds of years between like these two groups of normal people and people with powers, and like how that's literally all he's known, and it has affected like his family history in a way, like probably DNA trauma, but like it's been inextricable from like his being. Like I feel like you finally get that here, and you just see he's gone like so off course that like when you do finally get that ending, I don't know, I felt like I was a little sad that he had to die, but it was like, yes, obviously he needs to die, but yeah, I did feel like some empathy for him by the end, just like knowing all that like years of oppression that he like at the beginning probably wanted to like really do good and like make things right, and like along the way just like saw too much shit and like couldn't actually handle it, didn't have therapy. I don't know.
I think the age thing really does, because I mean, I'm gonna be very honest. I don't know. Like I get real mad sometimes about some shit that's going on in the world. If I lived for 500 or however long he is, like honestly, I don't know that I wouldn't become some version of the Darkling.
I feel like it wasn't like his like Grisha motive. Like I got like that part of it. I feel like it's the him like always pursuing Alina, Like, I was like, you have what you want right now. Like, yeah, she can come back and fuck you up at some point, but you have the throne, you have Ravka, you can be making changes. But he was so obsessed with Alina that I'm like, if he was like,
Okay.
I lost some of that. And I'm like, I get that he likes her, but does he like her enough to fuck up his situation and lose the bag that he did? Like, that part, like, where he's just like a sad, lonely person. I was like,
I
kind of disappointing.
Is it like that plus though, like that she's the only, like he's lonely, but it's also like she is the equal in his power and he wants all of the power. So it's kind of like, I think he's lonely, but I think it's also like a bit power motivated.
Yeah, because like he does say at the end, like he's like, oh, like you're nothing now, which I was like, that is a line to go out.
Yeah, that
on.
was so rude. I was like, dude.
Oh, I feel like that was the culmination of him for me at the end, where he literally like just like looks at her with such disgust when she doesn't have powers anymore. And I was like, oh, so like the whole thing was about her power. It was all about her power, nothing
She
about
says
her.
that to him. Like, she's like, you're not interested in me. You just, yeah.
I thought wasn't there a point, and like admittedly I read these books so quickly a couple months ago, but wasn't there a point too where like Alina or Leigh were discussing like the idea that their power is like the answer to the others, and that's how they have the connection? And so like to me then it makes sense that he would be so obsessed with her power, because it's like the absence of his and is like the yin to his yang in a way. To me that made sense, but I think
it makes sense to me because I think he's like, because he's been fighting this fight for so long. It's like, okay, this is the last step, and now you're gonna tell me no. I feel like he's started to lose it as soon as she like fucked up things for him in the first book. He's just like, no, like this human who's only lived like 18 years in life is gonna come and fuck up my whole centuries long plan. Like, I think that to me is what kind of made him so obsessed with her. Is not so much because it's like the final piece in the plan, and maybe it wasn't rational, but at that point, like, is he being rational? Like, the one thing though that I was a little upset about is Alina buying the him killing the children thing, because I'm like, everything about the Darkling, he would not kill a whole fleet of children that he could like mold to his, like, he didn't even kill Genia when he had the chance, and he like tortured her and stuff, but knowing the Darkling, he was gonna like, and he wasn't even going to kill David. He wasn't going to kill Mal. He won't kill someone if it's useful to him. And having a fleet of children to raise in your like mission and like propaganda, why would he? That just to me was like, come on, girl, really? Like,
I mean, I think. Oh no, you go.
After the battle at the little palace in book 2, where he obviously kills a shitload of Grisha.
Yeah, I believed it.
Yeah, he doesn't really care. Like, yes. The logic of like he won't kill anything that has power to him, but in theory that is power, killing those children at the orphanage, like the Grisha children at the orphanage.
But to what end? Him killing the Grisha at the little palace was so he can get to some, like, he
so that he
needed to get
Alina.
to
like
yeah.
believe
And I don't think he would. Really?
I think it was also true. Yeah, I think it was also like it feels like an escalation. Because, like, if you're thinking about it logically, like, obviously the Darkling's smarter than that, and he's not going to do that. But, like, if you're looking at it in terms of Alina's point of view, it seems like an escalation. So it seems like a natural progression, because he did kill all those Grisha. He did do all of that. Like, he wants her to no end, and he just keeps doing worse and worse things, and it's going up. So, like, it feels like it could have been a natural progression. But like, if you actually step back for a second, which obviously she couldn't really
have
do that.
Time, obviously, like that. Also,
you couldn't really be like, they're in the middle outside of this and discover.
She just found out she had to kill her best friend / reason for living. So I get that she was a little like, okay, no.
I thought it was true because like it made sense because he had other Grisha. Like there were all the people who like left Little Palace. Like the people he killed at Little Palace and the kids that were at Little Palace were people who technically kind of betrayed him because they stayed there and stayed with the king. So he didn't have any emotional ties to them, like especially because the kids were like sort of protected by Alina. He could have just been like, well, fuck these 34 children. Like,
yeah, like what do you kind of need Grisha kids for when you can make your own like shadow like soldiers.
Also
right?
true at this point.
True,
Yeah.
true.
And
I guess I was kind of going along the line of like his whole reason for doing everything that he tells us is his reason is so he can protect Grisha and like make them powerful and rulers of everything. And I'm like, if you have no Grisha, then how are you gonna do this goal that you, but I can like, I see. It's not a big thing that I was upset about, but when he didn't have them with him, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Cause he, you know, I guess what I'm more annoyed by is no one else thought about that. Even like Zoya, who's known the Darkland for, I think the longest out of that crew, like she's been with him and like in his like, and David and Jenia, like no one was like, would he actually do this though? Anyways, it's just, I guess I was upset that it wasn't even a topic of discussion at any point. I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about the whole priest, sun summon, whatever they're called.
The soul that thing.
That whole storyline. And because I was, I want to know what you guys think about that.
I feel like that thread was kind of dropped. Like we got it at the beginning and then nothing for like majority of the book. And then they come back at the end, like 10 of them have escaped the apparat to help her with her little mission. But yeah, I feel like there were so many interesting things introduced, but this whole book felt rushed. So like there was so much that she couldn't really explore further. And I was kind of like sad that we didn't get
there was a part at the beginning that I really wanted her to explore more, and I tabbed it when she was talking about the when she was talking about the it was hard not to compare the priest guards to the sold at soul, how most of the ones who joined the pilgrims were young and illiterate, whereas the priest guards are like clearly powerful, literate people who have I wish that had been explored more. And maybe it's like, because now the priest is a problem probably for Nikolai. Like I hope that that's explored in the next in those books.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say like, I think that she was planting seeds for future stories.
Good to know, because I'm just like, you can't just leave that. Like that felt like something important. And to me, it was another part of like, I think that's kind of why I'm just a little, I feel like Alina had so many goals and hopes for people and wanted to do so much. And this was one of them. Like she was like, you made me a saint, but you won't even give the people who think that I'm a saint the protection, the like educate, like the things that they need to survive. You're just using them. And so just, anyways, I don't know. I'm still thinking about that, but I felt like it was.
I think like Leigh also and Alina through Alina's POV like showed that the apparat really is even more so a political figure than he is a religious figure. Yeah.
I don't think he cares at all about the religious.
He's also religious.
I hate being around him.
Yeah,
I know.
Because Nikolai does mention that like he is in negotiations with the apparat at the end of the book. So like I feel like that is going to come back when we get to King of Stars in like months and months from now. But I'm interested to see how that goes. But I feel like it was a drop ball on my end.
It's just
he is so creepy. I don't like him at all.
It's just another person that wants Alina's powers. It's just another foil for Mal that didn't necessarily need to happen.
Thank you. Yes, because when the Darkling was like, "Oh, you're nothing now," I was like, and that's why Mal is the right choice. I felt very vindicated.
Against who? Nobody wanted her to be with the Darkling.
I know.
There are still people who want her with the Darkling.
Oh. Okay, but like also like
not here.
The whole theme, like Mal was the right choice because he didn't care if she had powers or not.
Yeah,
that was it. Like he was gonna be there regardless, and like that really drove it home.
I didn't buy that until this book. This was the book that I was like, fine, nah. He made me think. You know who he reminded me of? He reminded me of Kristoff from the Frozen movies.
That is blasphemy.
Especially in that second movie. I was like, oh my god, Mal is
No,
Kristoff.
I see that. No. I do. They both have a lot of himbo energy.
Yeah.
And they both are saying like, well, you have like the line in Frozen 2 where Kristoff is like, what do you need? Like that's a big Mal energy.
Right? Think of him, and now I'm imagining him as well.
Paige doesn't want to. You have Archie to look at. That's the.
Paige, I'm coming to your side. What's the problem?
Oh my god, this is not how I wanted it to happen.
This is what it's gonna take for me to accept Mal. He's Kristoff now.
Okay, go ahead, Dulcie.
I just want to say that I think like when I read it the first time and I didn't like fully appreciate the like how manipulative the Darkling was, I thought he was just a super hot villain. Like and like there are also like you cannot deny that Leigh is writing a lot of like sexual tension in there through their like psychic scenes.
She knows what she's doing.
So she knows what she's doing, but yeah. And if I could just insert one part, not to like keep on drawing more parallels to other pop culture, but like I think there is even more parallels with the Darkling and like Kylo Ren's story about like the obsession with like heritage and like who they come from.
Yep.
So
I kept thinking about the Star Wars stuff, especially like when we were talking about Morozova and like the whole hidden like lineage thing. I'm like, is this going to be a Rey and Kylo thing? Did Rian Johnson read these books? Because the similarities. I was saying like the introductions. When I was like writing notes for the book, the introductions where it's like the boy and the girl, that's like her Star Wars crawl, where she tells us where we need to be when we start the actual book. And I hate those introductions for that reason, because it does all this heavy lifting that I would rather just read. So yeah, lots of Star Wars parallels here. I don't think they're intentional.
I didn't even think about that being the crawl, but you're so right.
It's like I noticed this one specifically where it was like Alina has her powers again. The apparatus doing this thing. I was like, you're just telling us what we need to know to like get to this point in the story. Back. Exactly. Palpatine has risen from the dead, and he has a whole army.
You don't need to know how or why or what. Yep. Just you need to know what, but not how or why.
I mean, she didn't do as much to be like Palpatine is back, and like the evil guys are clones and all these things. So it wasn't that huge of a jump.
It wasn't huge. It was just like very funny. It's for my brain to be like, this is like a crawl. I'm like, it is. Speaking of, like, we were talking about the actor who's going to play Mal, who I'm very excited for. Who would you want to play Nikolai? Because we've had this conversation privately, and we need to blast it on the internet. We're gonna go there.
So I'm gonna start, because I think I kind of started this conversation a little bit. I saw this thing on Instagram that had Tom Holland, and it was like Nikolai be like or whatever. And I was like, I could see it, but I don't think Tom Holland's gonna be Nikolai, because I think that's way too much money for this TV show probably to hire him. But I think someone with that like profile, like facial profile, that makes sense to me. Because someone else mentioned, I don't know who it was, one of you mentioned that he was too nice and too like, I don't know, he's not like smarmy enough to be Nikolai.
Yeah, I couldn't see him doing it.
Who was it that said Alex Pettyfer? I was like, this is his comeback role. I agree.
Because like they brought back Ben Barnes, and he was one of the YA faves of like the early days, so it just feels right to bring back Alex Pettyfer as well.
Ben Barnes has aged well.
I don't know what Alex. Do I need to go?
What does he look like now?
Life?
Yeah,
I never liked him, so I mean, my.
I also said the guy who played Peter in Chronicles of Narnia. That was my other, like, him younger. Him right now, he's too old for the role. But the guy who played Peter in Chronicles of Narnia times, that would have been fire.
Like, I kind of want them to find someone new. Like I think I like what they've done with everyone else so far. Like I like the casting that they've had. Like Ben Barnes is the only like established actor. I think everyone else is like pretty newish. So I want them to try someone new.
My bet is the guy who plays Sky from Winx, because he already has a Netflix contract. They just like pop him over.
Wait, what's he look like?
He's blonde. He has a British accent, and he smirks sometimes. 3 things we need, and we're ready. And he's very tall. So
I don't think they could afford him.
Nikolai is a short thing. Anyone else? Like, he's not over 6 feet.
I've always loved the idea of him being taller than the Darkling, and that being a source of ire for the Darkling. I think that'd be fucking hilarious.
Because the Darkling hates him. Because look at what he did to him. Like everyone else, he was like, "I'll just kill you," or like he hated what Jenny did to him, obviously, and Bagra, and obviously, like those 3 people are the ones who suffer the most at the hands of the Darkling, without dying, obviously. So clearly, something hit a nerve.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, does anybody else have anything they want to talk about? Because I feel like I've run out and my brain is tapped out. Yeah, they'll see.
My casting would like who I don't think that they could afford would be like Aaron Taylor Johnson, but if he was blonde.
I see. Yes.
We're all like, this is it.
Done. They have to make it happen now.
I just think he could be very princely.
Yeah,
like
Yeah,
I don't
but also
know how
has
tall
the
he is.
vulnerability
After
while
this
being cocky.
Season.
He's
I feel like-
British.
Yeah.
You know,
Time to email Netflix, Dulcie.
I'll get on that.
Start the change.org campaign.
Well, there was like a rumor that season 2's already been confirmed, so they probably already cast if it is true. Because I feel like that'll be a reveal maybe at the end. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I don't even know how. I'm still curious about the 6 of how that's gonna happen because I'm just
so excited.
in
I
my
think we
head. I
all
know
should
they're
make-
in the. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say we all should make one prediction about what's gonna happen in the show. Like one thing we want to see the show do. Since it's like that's our next live show. Yeah.
I have one thing.
Yes.
It's so, and it's not. We don't need to discuss it. It's just something that bothers me in fantasy. The one mention of the southern colonies. I was like, fuck it. Why the hell do we hate having to do these very like? It's something that bugs me so much in fantasy, like slavery, colonialism, all these like things that don't need to be in a book unless you're exploring it in some way. And I know it was one mention, but it took me out of the book that one moment. I was like, nope, like I cannot deal. And I wrote it down in my notes that time. I was like, we need to bring it up because I wish more fantasy would either stick to like, if you're not going to explore these very heavy subject matters, then don't include it in your book because you clearly don't have the range to tackle it. Like, just stop. So anyways, this is my little rant.
I feel like I could
have
a whole live show about the world building and not being great because of the way it was done.
There was more scenery this time around, Kate. So.
They were in the tunnels for the first half of the book. I had this question about this already. That was my carriage ride this time. It was the tunnels.
We're gonna travel along the whole country, but just
underground.
Okay, let's see if the show does a ton of scenery page, and if you want to rip your hair out during it, just like carriage ride after carriage ride.
But like the world building outside of like carriage rides and tunnel, like the whole like each country is like a monolith of a people that like those choices were choices, and I'm curious to see like how that plays out in the show because there have been conversations happening about like the introduction of overt racism that wasn't really, it was like semi-present, like I feel like accidentally on Leigh's part, like I don't think it was intentional. It was not, but like I don't want anybody going back and saying it was intentional. No, that shit was not intentional. It was just in there because of the world building choices. But like I'm curious to see how it's handled because of that. I feel like I'm gonna be angry at some parts because of that introduction. That's my prediction. Is like I'm gonna have thoughts.
You're gonna have thoughts.
I'm gonna have thoughts about the racism as usual.
I'm trying to think of the prediction.
Next.
I think I'm gonna feel like really complicated about who I stan.
Mal, from the beginning, do you see that face?
I know I am. There's gonna be a moment where like the Darkling and her are alone in a room, and I'm gonna be like, oh,
maybe.
It's gotta be like, yeah, I don't know.
My prediction is that, I mean, we're gonna read 6 of Crows after we're done the show, I guess. So I think the show might actually make me like 6 of Crows more because my recollection of my experience of 6 of Crows is that I really disliked Kaz. I was like, this guy is too emo for me. But the show seems to, like, I don't know. I think they might make me warm up to those guys a little bit.
Are we talking about predictions for the show or for our reactions to the show?
Could be either.
Okay, this is my out there prediction that I want to be a thing that I think maybe somebody brought up at one point when we were all talking, but I want the Crows to somehow have a thing where they're like either trying to kidnap Alina or something, like they're in that, or I want Jesper's origin story because we saw him on the boat. I want it to be that he's like an army deserter from the moment that Alina has his whole thing, and that's what launches his story, because I think that would be really interesting. The end.
I feel like you saying the whole like kidnapping Alina thing, I could see them being like hired by somebody else to kidnap Alina. I could
like,
100% see that.
Okay.
They would do that shit.
Hear me out. Instead of is it the Shu or the Fjerdans that come after her?
The Fjerdans.
The Fjerdans.
Yeah.
Instead of Fjerdans, It's them. This year would be much more competent. Then they would have to escape somehow because the Elfeyrans die. So
that's valid.
Their timelines don't really work well together.
It's true. I'm so curious to see how they
Well, that's the thing, like how are they because the timelines are so, to me, I know they're in the same world, but I've never really connected them because they're so separate.
Like, Nina comes from
Ravka.
So like if you follow her timeline, like
her timeline's gonna be screwed up already.
Because I think they aged her up. Yeah,
because she was supposed to be in the orphanage.
Yeah, she was at the little palace after the Civil War.
She's a character that's
Sorry, you cut out of me.
Yeah, your internet did the internet thing.
Anyway, I'm so excited to watch the first episode / all of it and thoughts, guys.
I can't wait for people who have not read the books to realize that the Darklings evil. That is going to be
wild.
So good to watch online.
I guess some people
are they going to get spoiled
surprised.
for it far before that though? Because I feel like there's going to be too many spoilers in the world, but maybe they'll avoid them because
I feel like there will be people who have not seen anything because, like, especially because they're not calling him the Darkling in any of their promo. They're specifically calling him General whatever they called him, and like it's Ben Barnes, and the way they're going to set it up, like we're going to see it through Alina's eyes of him being like, I'm really like powerful, but I'm down with my people. Like we're gonna see.
I wonder now that you say that if that's why they changed his name because there's so many.
It's a surprise for the audience.
That's so.
The thing though is like, and this isn't really a spoiler, but that name General Kurgan, because I'm reading King of Scars now, is a throwaway character's name in the book in King of Scars.
Okay.
So I'm like, why did they grab that name from there? So I'm like, what are they doing?
King of the second book's not out yet, right? For that,
no, but it comes out next week.
Yeah, it's coming out on Tuesday.
Did we just spoil ourselves for the second book?
He's not actually dead. He's alive.
No, that's not. It's just a random general that's like is not important at all. But I'm rereading it and I'm like, that's the name that they used for the show.
Interesting. Okay, good to know. All right, so I think Anais, did you give us your prediction?
Oh, no, I didn't. I feel like I'm really bad at stuff. So all I'll say is that I just really want a Nina, Matthias backstory bit. That's all I want.
I feel like that's gonna come because they are together. So I feel like we'll get a little bit. I don't know. I think they're gonna be like one scene and that's gonna be it for them. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, thanks. You want the whole thing? That the entire season is going to be about Matthias and Nina. Yes. Alrighty. Thanks you guys for joining us for Rune and Rising. I'm glad that we did it and we had like coherent thoughts. That's great for us. Thrilled. Join us here next month.
It was a little rocky at the beginning.
That's true. It was chaotic at the beginning. Join us next month on the 26th. I want to say. Is it 26th? 25th. The Sunday after the show comes out, we'll be here talking about the show because we're chaotic.
Yes.
And we've all decided to take the day off, apparently.
Yes.
All of us collectively. So we will be watching it.
We should. Are we going to watch it all together or are we just going to watch it on our own time? Because I feel like that would be a really fun chaos.
Yeah, I feel like we should watch one episode together.
Watch the finale together?
Oh my God. Let's do it. Sold. We're watching the finale together. You guys will see what we think after that. And until next time, good luck surviving the next month until this comes out. That's all I'm going to be thinking about. Counting down the days.
No thoughts.
No thoughts. Just
Shadow
and Bone. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.